Hey, how are you? Hope you're doing well. You know, one of the questions that keeps coming up or surfacing is, how do I keep my database clean? Well, today I want to kind of talk about that a little bit, maybe some best practices of keeping your database clean. We're not doing a deep dive into this. We're not going to go in and get very granular into it, but we're going to kind of talk about, what are some of the best practices to keep your database clean. I'm going to show you a tool that we use, that we developed, that helps us in part keep your database clean, and we'll cover that as well. So let's get at it. All right, so keeping your database clean. It's one of the things that when you talk about database clean, I mean, I've had companies that have been in business for 30 plus years. They've got huge databases, like ginormous, and a lot of dead wood in there. A lot of dead wood meaning, a lot of people who are no longer in business, no longer at that organization, those sorts of things. And so how do you keep that clean? I think the first question you need to ask yourself, and this should be part of your SOP or your standard operating procedure, is, well, who's responsible? Who's responsible for each of those contacts? Now, some companies I've consulted with, they have a single point person that looks after the database. They keep the database clean. And in part, there's certain responsibilities that admin or someone who's been assigned to database cleanup can do database cleanup. But there are other things that have to be left to somebody who actually works with that particular contact. If you have an admin person that's kind of reaching out, they're going to constantly be bugging, a salesperson or an operations person saying, hey, what about this? What about that? Do I need to change this address? I got 2 of these in here. Which is the right address? And, in part, that's going to happen. But who is responsible? I found that if you have a single point person, it may not be the best in all scenarios. So you kind of need to reach out. Let's just take, for argument's sake, for this particular recording that we're going through right now, what if we just said, okay, the salesperson is responsible. So what is the salesperson responsible for? Well, making sure the phone numbers are accurate, making sure the email is up to date, is the right one, making sure the address is up to date. So there's certain content information that they should be working on and keeping the database clean. Is the person no longer in business? Is the person moved to another organization? So those are the questions you need to ask. But the first question you need to ask, well, who's gonna keep the database up to speed? It's kind of like when I was a kid, we used to play softball, and you'd get a pop fly, right? The ball would go up, and you got 3 people kind of looking at it, saying, okay, who's going to catch this ball? And majority of the time, nobody would dive in because they were waiting to see if one of the other people were going to dive in and catch that ball. And a lot of times the ball just hit the ground. So a lot of times that's very much similar with a database. You're going to have the ball pop up. Well, who's going to look after this data cleanup on this particular contact record? And the ball gets dropped, and it just sits there with inaccurate information. You go to do some marketing or send out a mail campaign, and the address is wrong, or the email address is wrong, or that guy's no longer there. And so you need to kind of clean it up. So who's responsible? Choose somebody. Make a decision of who is going to be responsible. So let's dive into a database, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to talk about a tool that can be used to help with part of that. All right, so we're in our demo database, and this is the demo database that I use all the time. It's the Advisor. I know it's not a fit for everybody, and everybody's organization is different, but this is the one I go to because it's got lots of features in there, and if there's a question or what have you, I can kind of drill down, and this pretty much has everything we have with most of our clients that we work with, or at least components of it. All right, so data cleanup. So let's go back to the scenario that I'm the salesperson and I'm responsible. So I would have, and in this case, it would be, you could have, in this case, there's an advisor, you could have a salesperson who's responsible. I personally like under the okay, where is it? Oh, it's over here. The record manager, who is responsible? That's a system field. And once you choose who the record manager is, then that person should be responsible. Now, if you're going to have two people that's going to be responsible, you may have to have a field like this where it's a multi-select and you check off more than one person. But again, it all boils back down to who's going to be responsible. So let's just move over to a contact record. And let's just pick Charles here. And, so keeping the address up to date, keeping the phone number up to date, that's pretty straightforward. We really don't need to go granular on that. Keep the information as up to date as possible. Make sure that whoever you are that's responsible for this contacts record, make sure it's up to date. Make sure you have the proper information in here. Make sure you have an address. Make sure you have a phone number. Make sure you have a cell number if you can catch that. Whatever you can catch. The more information, the more accurate information, the better. Just make sure you're continuing to update it. Now, one of the questions is, what happens if Charles no longer is at that organization? So let's just go over to our companies over here for a second. We're going to choose somebody in a company. And let's find one that has multiple. Let's ABC Corp. So we got 3 people here. Let's just say Tanya is no longer with the organization. So how do I deal with that? Do I just get rid of her? Now she may have, if I go to Tanya's record, she may have historical information that I don't want to lose, email links, that sort of stuff, notes, histories, all that good stuff, and I don't want to lose it. So what do I do? How do I manage this person while they're in transition? Well, first thing is find out where they've gone. Check them out on LinkedIn, and go and find out, hey, where did they go? Where are they at? Try to reach out and find out, where did they land? And then update the information. But what do we do with the historical information that we had with this individual? Well, we don't want to have Tanya in here twice. We don't want to have her linked to ABC Corporation as not valid any longer or is inactive, and we don't want to have 2 records for her. So how do we manage this? And this is a big question for a lot of companies that have a lot of transitional people going through. Oil and gas industry, we're in Calgary here, and a lot of oil and gas, and there's a lot of transition, so there's a lot of changes. So what do you do with this individual? Well, there's no right or wrong. The question is, how do you want to link this person to the next location? So if they go to a next location, typically what we do is we could create a brand new record for them. And in what we do with this information is we don't want to delete it, because then all that information's gone. So what we want to do is archive this person. That way, all the information is still there. So if we have to go back, we can find it. So how do you archive a contact? And this is the best way. There are other ways that you can kind of fudge it and kind of mess around with it. However, we just found that it's not as clean. When you take this person, send them out to an archive database, which you can do. You can export this person out into another database. What that means, though, is you've got to close down this database and open up another database to go and search for them. And this is why we came up with this, the archiver, which is a tool that allows you to deal with that. And so, again, field information updates, pretty straightforward. Just make sure whoever's responsible is keeping them up to date. But when it comes to this person has moved to another location, you can keep the record Tanya twice if you archive it properly. If you don't archive it, you don't want Tanya in there twice. You don't want her in there linked to ABC Corporation and the ID ID status is at a different link, like it's not a active customer, it's has moved or something like that. I've seen that. You don't want to do that. It just makes it mess, because all of a sudden you start sending an email to her new location or wanting to do a history, and now you've got histories going into both records. I've seen that a lot. So you only want the person in there once active. So what we do is we archive this person, and that way we don't have to worry about histories going and linking to them, because they're no longer active or on the forefront. So how does the archiver work? Well, once you install it, there's no configuration, so you just install it with the version of ACT you've got, pretty straightforward. And then you've got these two buttons right up here on the contact record. Now, let me just preface before I dive in here that the archiver is only for the desktop version only. It's not for the web version. Okay, so let's make that really clear right off the bat. So it's for the desktop version. The other part is that because it's for the desktop version, each individual who wants to, in your organization, that wants to be able to hide these, needs to have a license of it. Okay, those are the two first facts about using the archiver. And the last part is that the archiver can only archive contacts. It cannot archive companies. And so that's an important distinction. You can archive all the contacts you want, but you can't archive the companies. And it's just the way that ACT has designed the system. Didn't allow us to actually archive a company yet. So we keep up with whatever changes ACT does with what they call the software development kit, or the SDK. Once we get to a point where they make a change or what have you, that we can access that to make those adjustments so we can archive a company, we'll do it and you'll get it. But for now, it's just contacts. So let's get back to it here. All right, so now on a contact record, let's just say that Tanya no longer is with this company. She's going to be working for another organization. We just haven't scoped that out yet. When we scope that out, we'll enter her back in and we'll add her, the company that she's going to work with, but she'll be on our flagged list until we find them. So you could leave Tanya active or right here and then just put a note that you're trying to search out where she's gone. And once she's gone, or once you found out where she's at, then you can go and archive her. You have to come up with your own standard operating procedure around that. When do you archive a person? So in this case, to archive, it's just this little box right here. It's like it's like a banker's box is what it is, and it's like you're archiving. So when you click on that, it's going to say, would you like to archive this contact? You go, sure. And now this person, it'll say has been archived. You go okay, and you'll notice that we just changed from 3 up here to 2. So now we don't have, and if I go to the company record here, so they won't show up on here once you've archived them. And you can archive them from multiple locations. You can archive them from here, just from the desktop here. But when you archive that person, and let's go find another one really quick here. So let's go to Jackson Big Man here. Let's say Sally's no longer with the organization. I can archive Sally, and Sally's gone. If I want to go to a contact list, for an example, and let's go to our contact list, and let's view all contacts. And let's just say I'm going to archive, I'm just going to randomly grab a bunch of people. We'll throw them back later. I'm going to highlight those, click on here, and would you like to archive the selected contacts? Absolutely. And you'll notice from 99, it's going to jump down to 74. Now, if I want to see those people, all I have to do is click this second button, and this shows the archived records. It goes into an archive view, and it will show all the contacts that have been archived. So if I need to go and find out something about Tanya, I just go to the archive view. I can pull up her record, and you'll see that I'm not in the full database. I'm only in the archive portion of the database. And then if I want to make her active again, she, didn't like where she was working at and got her old job back, then I can unarchive her by just clicking on the button again. And would you like to unarchive her? Absolutely. and go OK. And you'll notice that that's jumped from 35 records down to 34 records. And then now if I go out of the archive view, and if I go back to my company, and let's just have a look at ABC Corporation, you'll see that Tanya is back in there again. And that's how simple and easy it is. Basically, it's hiding a contact. They're still in the database. All their notes, histories, attachments, all that stuff is still there. It's just you don't see them. And that is a really, really nice way of keeping your database clean. If somebody's moved, somebody's passed away, the company is no longer a viable company, whatever the case may be, you come up with a scenario, you can archive those contacts. Just remember, again, you can't archive the company, but you can archive any of the contacts. And this is one of the ways of keeping your database clean. I found this such an important tool. To be able to have multiple records for somebody like Tanya's no longer at this organization, but she's now at that organization. I can have her in twice, but I don't see her. I've only see the active one that's in there. The archived one is out of the way, and I don't have access to her. So hopefully this has helped. It's given you a snippet. Again, we didn't do a deep dive into here, but you've gotten enough information to know, well, hey, we have to find, well, who's going to be accountable? That's got to be the first thing. And then just making sure all the field information is up to date. And then just making sure that you've got all your ducks in a row with having a tool like the Archiver to help with this cleanup. I remember one company, I won't name who it was, they had 30,000 contacts in there. They had some database damage, some serious database damage. They were moving from a very, very, very old version of ACT into a newer version of ACT, and the old version had some corruption to it, and it was it caused a big problem. So what they had to do is had to start from scratch and just import the records that they knew were active in there. Well, out of 30,000, they had, if memory serves me correctly, they had, this was back in 1998 or 9, I think it was. They ended up with about 2,500, 3,000 records that were active people. All the rest was deadwood, but they lost it. But they could have archived those and not had them in the forefront. So it is a great little tool to be able to help, but put a plan together. Make sure that what you're doing is you've got it on your agenda to talk about data cleanup, who's responsible, keep things up to date. And if somebody's email is bounced, find out where they went, because that's usually a good indicator that they're no longer there. And just work your database. Try to keep it as up to date as possible. You'll never have it 100% clean, but try to get as close as you can. Hope this has helped. Have yourself a great day. All the best, and we'll catch you on the next one.